is the start of a new week and also a new room in Escape the Readathon. Escape the Readathon, for those who don't know, is a competitive readathon run by Books with Lexi. This is a readathon in which there are 4 teams trapped somewhere, and each team is trying to be the first to escape because only one of us can. This year, we are trapped in a spaceship that is being overtaken by aliens. And as of yesterday, my team is currently trying to break into the command center. And in order to get in, we have to read a certain amount of books fitting within our reading prompt, which is to read books that contain one of your top 3 tropes. For me, my top 3 tropes are number 1, loyalty/devotion, which to me means that there is a romance between the main character and someone who is deeply loyal or devoted to them, like a knight or a bodyguard or like a right-hand man. You catch my drift. My second favorite trope is found family, which I feel is self-explanatory. And my third favorite trope is retellings, whether that be a fairy tale retelling or a myth retelling. I just really enjoy seeing the same story told under different circumstances and how that changes things. So to start my attempts at breaking into the command center, the first book that I'm going to be reading is actually an arc that I have that is coming out later this month. It is coming out March 28th, I believe. And that is Black Hole Guns for Hire by Friday Strout. This story is about a captain who is the leader of a ship of veterans who go on rescue missions. And she finds out that the military which she works for has left a planet to be sucked into a black hole because there is a rebel base residing in it. But it's not just the rebels who live there, there are innocent people. And so she leads her crew on a rescue mission going against their higher command and attempts to save these people from a black hole. That is my understanding of the story from the synopsis. And I think it's a really interesting story. I think there's a lot of room to explore concepts and ideas like the chain of command in a military and how an individual's own ethics and principles can be called into question and how or when those should take a higher priority than a given order from a superior. This fits into, I think, 2 of my favorite tropes. I believe that, first of all, it fits under loyalty/devotion because, according to the synopsis, the romance of this novel is between the captain and her chief, who kind of like keeps discipline on the ship. So I believe that that will count as loyalty, devotion. I might have to change that verdict as I read the novel and learn about these characters. Maybe it's not quite the dynamic that I think it is, but at the very least, I do believe that this will fit under found family between the crew members of this spaceship. This is an arc that I was given access to from NetGalley, and so I'm hoping that I'm going to really enjoy it. The premise sounds very good, and I mean, I love stories with a fellow lesbian, so we will see. what I think of Black Hole Guns for Hire by Friday Strout. Hi, it is now Sunday morning, and I have decided, sadly, that I am going to be DNFing Black Hole Guns for Hire by Friday Strout at 45%. I think that the premise of this book is really strong, and I really loved the very casual representation of both lesbians and trans women in this. I always love to find stories that have representation where the simple existence of it doesn't need to be justified, or the story doesn't need to be about their coming to terms and coming out. Granted, those stories are very important, but I think we also need stories that aren't about that. So I think this book definitely fills that niche for me, but I can't bring myself to continue reading this despite the strong premise and the fun action scenes, because I don't feel connected to any of the characters. Black Hole Guns for Hire is told from three characters' perspectives, which I think could work, but I think the weakest aspect of this book is the fact that it is told in third person. And so, with it being third person and also the fact that there are three POV characters, we don't get to know any single one of them well enough or deep enough to really form an attachment between the reader and the characters. I think each of the POV characters, Lena, Zuri, and Tyson, have things which stand out about them and which could be used to connect with the reader. It's just that the outside perspective that we have as third person and the bouncing between each of them keeps you from like really connecting the details and getting a deeper read on the character's psyche. I think my recommendation for this author in the future would be to either try branching into first person or to narrow the POVs down a little bit. I think this book could have been fine with just two POVs to switch between, that being Lena and Tyson, because I think that they both had the stronger character motivations and conflicts within the narrative compared to Zuri, who is a little bit more of a supporting role to both of their stories, it felt like to me. So I will not be continuing to read Black Hole Guns for Hire, but for people who do enjoy third-person narratives, and for people who like sci-fi action-packed adventures like Star Wars or Star Trek, I think that this will be a very fun read for you, and you should give it a try when this book comes out on May 28th. The next book that I'm going to be reading fits into my favorite tropes, as it is a myth retelling. Specifically, it is a retelling of the Iliad from the female characters' perspectives. And that is The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is a feminist revisiting of the Iliad, which is very famously a male-centric story, and who I think the most famous participant of is Achilles, with the very famous retelling The Song of Achilles. And I think that this will give us a very different look at his character compared to what the Song of Achilles gave us, which the Song of Achilles is a book that I greatly enjoyed, but I'm always looking for new angles and new perspectives to see a story through. It is now Wednesday evening, and I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, if it's Wednesday, wouldn't this normally be the start of a new weekly reading vlog? And you would be correct, except I was in a bit of a reading slump last week, so I didn't read very much. So I decided, you know what, I'll just skip this week and we'll do a 2-week reading vlog next week. So that's what's happening. I have just finished reading The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, and I absolutely adore this book. First of all, the prose in this is beautiful. It's just so poignant, and it really hit me in my emotions, and it's just so beautifully written at some points that I was amazed. Specifically, there is a point where Briseis begins listing off the men and boys that Achilles killed in his grief over Patroclus, which I will not count as a spoiler because the Iliad has been around for centuries, and I think we all know the story of Achilles and Patroclus. It was just so impactful to me, and it hit. On a whole, I think that this novel does a really amazing job showcasing the reality of historically what war has entailed when war includes an invading party and people being invaded, with death and enslavement and women being abused, and that just being lost to history, which is really the main theme of this book, of shedding light on the hard truths that have happened to women in history that we tend to just gloss over. And I just really loved this book, and I highly recommend it to people who like myth retellings, and even to those who don't. I think this is just such a deeply impactful read that, I don't know, I want everyone to read it. I love this book, if you can't tell. So I do not know what I'm going to be reading next. I feel like we are about to be moving on to our next room, and therefore our next prompt within Escape the Readathon for my team. So I don't want to start anything before I know kind of what I need to read for that. If we don't get to that by tonight of getting that announcement of our next prompt, then I'm going to be continuing to read Binding 13 on my Kindle for Pages, and we'll see how far I get in that before the next prompt is announced. All right, it is Thursday now, and I was a little bit off on the timing, but we have moved on from reading for pages, and we are now on to our next reading prompt, which we have chosen to be doing anti-recs, which means we are reading books that other people have given 1 or 2 star ratings or just didn't like. And this prompt was given in the hopes that readers with different tastes from each other would be able to look at each other's past read books and potentially find something that they would enjoy because they have different tastes. So to start off reading for anti-recs, I am going to be reading The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I can't remember who specifically right now, but I do have a friend in real life who is not a fan of this book, but I am a big fan of found family, and I've heard a lot of good things about the found family aspect of this, and also I want to know about the Antichrist child that I've heard is a character in this. So I don't know, I'm gonna give it a try, and we will see if this ends up being a good book for me or if it will soon become one of my anti-recs. All right, I have just finished reading The House in the Cerulean Sea, and I really enjoyed this. It's a very cozy fantasy read. And the kids are all so cute. I loved all the kids. I think Sal is my favorite, followed by Lucy. Don't we all come to the house in the Cerulean Sea for Lucy? I kind of expected him to be my favorite, but he got outmatched by Sal. It was a very good book. I am giving it 4 stars just because there were points when I was reading it where I was kind of like, okay, this is all very fun and cute, but I kind of want there to be more conflict happening. That was like the main thing that I thought at some points, and so obviously there was just something about the pacing or the writing style where I was like, this is fun. Can we move along a little bit? So that detracted from me giving it 5 stars. And also I feel like the plot and the theming of this book falls into the same pitfall that a lot of fantasy explorations of racism fall into, which is that it's not entirely a fair comparison to make the treatment of normal humans who were just different based off of skin tone or the continent that they were from to magical beings who, while it's not fair, there is a logical reason for fear of them, which leads to the mistreatment. Because obviously this book, a lot of the subtext is about how Native Americans have been treated historically by the US government and US citizens. This isn't the most egregious case that I've ever seen of it. Like, I think probably a good example of another media that falls into this same pitfall is the Zombies franchise by Disney, which the zombies are meant to be allegorical to African Americans, except it's not fair to make that comparison when the zombies were, in fact, previously man-eating creatures. And now they are under control, but they could still regress back to man eating. It's not a fair comparison to make. This book does not have that same pitfall as much. I think it handles it a lot better than the Zombies franchise does. But it was something that I was thinking about as I was reading, so it did detract from the main message and theming of the book a little bit for me. But overall, I did really enjoy it, and I think it is a very good book. And I believe that there is a sequel to it because it's part of a series. I don't know if it's a direct sequel or like if it's standalone stories set in the same world, because I do feel like this book is good as a standalone, but I will be trying the next book in this series eventually. Not right now because I have a million other books to read, but eventually I will be picking up the sequel. Instead of reading the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, I am instead going to be picking up Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't have a very good understanding of what this book is about beyond it being about a band from the 70s? 60s. Beyond it being about a fictional band from the 60s. That is my complete understanding of this book. I think my biggest fear going into this will be that there will be a lot of like moments where there will be like music written on the page and it won't 100% translate to being read in a book for me. That is my biggest fear. I might get the audiobook off of Hoopla to hybrid read this, but I'm just gonna try with the physical first and we'll see how it goes. Hello everyone, it is now Sunday afternoon and I have just finished reading Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was a really fun book. I had a really good time reading it. I loved the format of this being told through like interviews by the band members reflecting on their past. I thought that that was really cool and a really inventive way to tell this story and get as many perspectives as possible from the characters. I think it really helped build the complexity of everyone. I think if this was only told from Daisy's perspective or Billy's perspective, we'd have a very different understanding of not only themselves or the specific character who would have been narrating, but also all the other characters, because we wouldn't have gotten inside of their heads to be able to really understand them and their perspective of what happened. Because really, it was all of their perspectives and their experiences and worldviews converging together that created the narrative. I also love that it resulted in me having mixed feelings about pretty much everyone by the end of it. I don't think there's a few characters that I came out like, I just love you, a couple of them I was like, you're so well written, I like you, but at the same time I don't like you. And I think that that's really hard to do, to write good, complex characters. And Taylor Jenkins Reid succeeded at getting me to understand all of these people. And now, to read the book that hasn't really been brought up since the beginning of this vlog, I need to finish reading Binding 13. It is due at my library in like 2 days, and I am only a third of the way through. So that is going to be my priority to read today. And hopefully I will be able to finish it in time.